So welcome back, everyone, to another incredible episode of Chat with Dan here. For today on the show, what can I say? Yeah, I'm already speechless, and we haven't even started yet because we have here the incredible, the amazing, the badass, the superstar, the legendary, the one and only Marni. Marni, how are you today?
I'm very good. How are you?
Fantastic. I mean, what better way to have an incredible, super badass evening than to be chatting with someone as badass as you? You know what I mean? Already the highlight of the week by far.
I love this. You're pumping me up, and this feels great at a long day. And so this is great. This is great energy at the end of the day.
There you go. I got you. Now, for those who are new to the channel, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, follow. It helps a lot. But also, on the description below, you're going to find all of Marni's social media. Let's follow her. Let's find out why she's super badass and also a superhero. Why not, right? And without further ado, let's jump in. So, I want to start this whole conversation by throwing out the first question, which is, before you ever considering storytelling as a career, what was the first moment, or was it maybe when you were a kid or perhaps a teenager when you felt the power of a story?
Yeah, I didn't come into filmmaking as a sort of a super fan of film growing up. When I was a kid, I did a lot of camping across Canada with my family. There's not a lot of cinema in the wilderness, but what there are is a lot of books, a lot of novels. So I read a lot of novels when I was a kid, and I particularly loved historical fiction. And my family had emigrated to Canada after the Second World War. So that kind of historical fiction and around that was something I was really interested. There's a lot of really great books, youth books that are around historical fiction from that era. And then that kind of got me into this fixation of wanting to do school abroad. And so I worked in a shoe store for high school so I could finish high school in Europe. And so I did this really interesting experiential school education program, a semester abroad, where all of the lectures were done on location. So it was a history program. And yeah, it's when you're teaching teenagers about history, it's so much of that is, kicking the dust and, igniting the ghosts, so to speak. And so for me, that was really probably my introduction into storytelling. Really, love of that is that how do we tell the stories that make us human? How do we connect with people that are from different places that are not like us? And for me, that was always through literature. I could travel the world through literature. And then when I got a little bit older to be a teenager, I got to literally travel. And so that I think was where the impact of storytelling started for me.
The beginning of a badass story. Just saying. I love
Yeah.
it. And tell me, when you studied abroad, which country you went?
When I did a history program, a modern Western history program, and a classical civilization program. So it was in Europe. I did France, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, and Greece. And then I came to work for that company later to help design programs that were global. So through Central America and Asia and into Africa. Mm-hmm.
I love it. Now, you've worked as a writer, director, and story editor. But tell me, what part of storytelling makes you feel the most alive, let's say?
I'm a writer in my bones. That's the thing I am first. Story editing allows me to sort of use my skill set to help other people get to the heart of their stories. And directing for me has always been an extension of writing. The thing that makes me feel the most alive is when you really, really connect that emotional idea. For me, it's like comedy is kind of my weapon of choice. I feel like laughter is a life raft, so that when I can get the heart of the thing, the closest to the bone, and the funniest joke right up against each other, to me, that is when I feel the most alive. Just writing really incredible characters that are doing really funny things. There's like specific moments, but the thing that makes me feel most alive is really digging into the heart of the story. What is the story, and why must it be told?
There you go. I'll take it. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And every writer has a story they haven't told yet because either it's too personal or too raw. Do you have perhaps like one of those? And what would it need to happen for you to finally tell it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm in that right now. I come from comedy. I come from sketch comedy world, and something you can often say about comedians is like it's this way of navigating the world, and you can also help distance yourself from some of the emotion by making a joke. Like some people are uncomfortable and they make a joke, like that's 100% who I am. And a lot of my work for a really long time, I've been able to kind of distance my personal experience from the work a little bit. But yeah, I think like a lot of people, a pretty wild pandemic. But for me personally, I was in a marriage that fell apart. And then I found out completely by accident that I was 5 months pregnant after I left the marriage. So I had this roller coaster that happened to me. And I knew, sometimes you got to be careful if you want to claim being a writer because the universe will give you a story. And and the universe gave me this story, and that's sort of the brass tacks of it. There's obviously a lot more to it. But for me, humor is how I navigate it. It just sometimes I think you can't write about something when you're in it, so you need a little bit of distance from it. And then you have to kind of figure out, okay, there's the story that happened, and then what is the story I want to tell? What is it I really am interested to say about this? Or what is the piece I think that connects to people? How do I want to structure this? So there's a sort of practical storytelling things that come out of that you have to sort of navigate when you're trying to use source material or something that's really, really personal to you. But yeah, I've written a feature that I did not direct, and I'm developing into a feature script that I will direct. So I'm sort of in the heart of trying to get into the second draft of the script and to start to package it and find a producer and yeah, figure out all the rest.
Gonna drop the mic because you're basically killing it already, you know?
You're like, what's the dark secret that you have that you want to tell me? I'll tell you, my life blew up. That's not what you're expecting, but this is it.
There you go. So you're also a super mom. I mean,
So I'm also super mom, solo
there you
parent.
go.
Yes.
You're killing it. I love it. I love it. It takes guts and you're making it happen. Respect.
I
I like
mean,
it.
life's tough for everyone, you know? It's just like if you want to get into film and television, you have to be the type of person who can just like handle it. So for me, it's like, yeah, buckle up. This is it. I was born for this.
Yeah, yeah. You know, there was a time in which I was constantly saying to myself, like, whenever something happened, right, like an obstacle or something along the way, right, I used to tell myself, like, first I'm gonna figure that thing out, and once I figure that out, I'm gonna continue with my life, right? That was something that I believed in. But then life taught me that no, you need to keep working with your, you need to keep moving in your daily life, and the problems that will come along every now and then, solve them, but continue moving forward, don't stop, because if you stop, then the next one is gonna happen, like the next adventure, let's say, is gonna appear, and then the next one and the next one. So I kind of understand that you need to continue moving forward along, and during along the way, keep solving stuff here, like every now and then, because that's just the way it is. Otherwise, you're gonna be stuck, and yeah, it's gonna be bad basically.
100%. Well, yeah, 100%. Like you can't control life, you can't control the world. Like we're obviously in a moment globally where it feels like there's chaos everywhere. So it's when you can't control that, the only person you can not control, but the only behavior you have any ability to determine is your own. And so it's how you meet the moment, It's like bravery is not the absence of fear. It's being very afraid and taking action anyway. And that to me is storytelling. Like when I was in the depths of some of the darkest moments of my life, when you write a script, the protagonist of a story is the one who's making choices. And so that's it. If the protagonist in a script is not making choices, they're not a protagonist, because you can't just have stuff happen to people. You do have to make choices in the face of conflict, and that is the heart of any kind of a film, any story, right? Is a protagonist meets obstacle, meets conflict, and has to make a choice to move forward. And it's the how of that becomes the meat of the story, right? And what happens as a result. So the same is true for your own life. The same, and I have been going through hard times in my life. I kind of like break it down like a writer in all ways. It's like, okay, so here we have the obstacle. What are the tactics we are going to use to overcome it?
Yeah,
And
that's just
then proceed.
yeah, that's just the way it is. I
Yeah.
think it's the most healthiest way to continue moving with your life and continue, doing your own stuff, and because that's just the way it is, and I think sometimes that we forgot the chance that how beautiful it is that we get the chance to choose how we're going to proceed and whenever, we actually can get the chance to actually take a decision to it, which sometimes I think that we don't take it from granted, we just kind of think that we're moving along, but the fact to take a break and be like, okay, where do I have to go so I can solve this, but at the same time I need to continue moving forward because my life, time is passing and I can't stop for whatever
Yeah,
reason.
you got to give things a go. Like, and you're going to make mistakes. I think, often creatives or people who want to be creatives are trying to figure out like what are the hacks? What's the fastest way through the process? And we look at a finished product and we think all the decisions that were made to get there were like the right intentional decisions. And I think every decision you make should be very intentional, but you make mess along the way. You could just got to give it a go, because if you don't try, you'll never know, and you will figure it out along the way. It will come together. But that paralysis is a very symptomatic of creative people, and myself included, can feel very like I'm afraid to make a choice because it all feels bad, or it all feels wrong, or I can't see the end yet. And sometimes like you just have to take one step and then another and then another. And sometimes when the obstacles come in the way, they are actually helpful. There's always value somewhere left on the table. And if the pursuit of perfection will be, I'm definitely guilty of wanting to pursue perfection all the time. I don't think I'm unique in that, but being conscious that that's what I'm doing is important sometimes, because the pursuit of that over other things can be very prohibitive to, as you say, growth, to discovery, to play, to all these things that can make creative work so much more igniting, than a really like perfectly thought out, perfectly executed, airtight plan. I work in comedy. There's like the element of surprise and delight, and it's just there's magic to that, and everyone has seen that and knows what that is. Like, something that was magical in a moment that happened, that was captured, that you could not have planned. So those moments, you have to leave space for them.
And guide me a little bit onto the whole, like, what is your usual process when you're writing comedy? I mean, I have interviewed some people that do comedy most of the time. I mean, yeah, most of the time they are telling me that it's all about the timing. And
Mhm.
sometimes if you really plan yourself to make it really funny, sometimes it does not connect. And sometimes when you just kind of let yourself go and see where it takes you, it turns out to be hilarious. So in your case, guide me through your process. How you build up the whole the whole thing, let's say.
Comedy is subjective. I don't think it is. I think it's mechanical. A bit of it is craft. I started as a sketch comedy performer live on stage for many, many years. And so I practiced trying things that I thought were funny. And then the good thing about comedy is you know very quickly if it works. You start to understand what you can do, because every writer is different. That is really keying in with an audience. And then you start to move towards that a little bit more. You start to have your own bag of tricks. I mean, there's like little bits of bobs with comedy. There's like rule of thirds, there's runners, there's rhythm is obviously something we talk about a lot in comedy. But for me, I always find that the best comedy is character driven. It's, I don't do stand-up comedy. I write films, so it's characters. So finding, what is it that a character wants, and to make them want that thing desperately. And that doesn't need to be a huge thing. That can actually be the tiniest thing in the world. But to them, the stakes are really, really high. So for me, it's figuring out what the texture of that character is, and then to put them in a world where there's a lot of obstacles. I think is like that's a comedy thing. I don't necessarily think though that I start a project being like, I'm going to write a comedy. What would be a great comedy? Usually how my brain works is I will pick out, there'll be like moments or things that have stuck with me for a really, really long time, and they might be disconnected in my mind, but then eventually they'll float together. I had a short film called This Is Not About Swimming, and the origin of that was two pieces. I had a friend who worked in a community center in Toronto with like facilitating a conversation circle with community members who spoke English as a second language. And there was a woman who had lived in Toronto for 25 years, and she had never learned to speak English because she didn't need to, because she was originally from China. She lived in an area of town that was predominantly Chinese. She worked in a job with all Chinese people for 25 years, and she put her kids through school, and then she retired, and she decided this was her retirement project. And to me, that blew my mind, that someone would live in the same city that I live in for 25 years and never learned the language. To me, that seems like, what is that? What is that? And then that was a thing that just sat in my brain. And then I was married to a competitive swimmer who swam long distance, and I would kayak for him spot in a lake. And so I spent a lot of time watching him swim and thinking about swimming, and swimming as a metaphor and swimming as a survival skill. And so these two pieces floated in my brain, and then it became developed a story about a woman who was in her 50s who decided she was going to face her greatest fear, which was learning to swim. And for me, swimming is a survival skill. Language is also a bit of a survival skill. So I was really interested in this idea of facing your greatest fear at this time of life that's kind of awkward to do that, where you don't actually have to anymore. And what would that look like? And then what's the texture of that character? And for me, what made her funny, and what made the challenge of it funny? And how do I throw things in her path? So it was like these two very random anecdotal things that just happened to be sitting with me for a while. And I was like, I like the idea of an unlikely sports story. I like the idea of a goal that seems small to other people, but is actually like seismic for the character. And to make it sort of feel that, like, anyways, for me, sometimes it's I take these pieces with me for a very long time, and then one day they start to kind of synthesize into this new idea, and then I go, and then I figure out a character, and I start writing dialogue for them.
And tell me, if someone looked at all of your work and tried to decode it, what do you think they would find?
What would they find? I talk about grief a lot in very weird ways. I think that they would find that. I think that they would find that this person really thinks that humor is healing. And as I said before, that laughter is a life raft. I think that is something that they would decode, that I am absolutely enamored with weird weirdos. I love them.
Cool. I'll take it. That is amazing. And tell me, like, what do you think that it's one storytelling rule you think it's overrated, and one that it's underrated?
I think overrated is likability of a character. I think it is a thing I fight for often. It's something broadly speaking, we do to female characters over male characters. But, there's this, not to knock Save the Cat, which is a very famous book, but there's this idea that in order for us to care about a character, we have to like them. In order for us to be invested in a character, they must be likable. And I think that is an overrated thing. I think likable is unfunny. Like, it can be very unfunny. So yeah, I think likability is overrated. And I think something that is underrated is strong structure. I think structure is story, like really grounded, strong structure and character. I think, especially in comedy, jokes are easy, but like a really rooted, clear character and a really strongly structured blueprint, a script are always, for me, underrated.
More badass. There you go.
Yeah.
I love it. And when do you know when a script is done? Or is it really ever done?
Well, no, it's never done. A script, you write your project 3 times. You write it on the page, then the page is taken to a set and actors perform it, and then it changes again, it transforms again. So that's your second version. And then you take it to an edit suite and you completely rewrite it again. So I think, you have to make a call at some point that this is the script we're going to go to camera with. but obviously it will change. I think a mistake a lot of people make is they try to go to camera too fast, because the second you go to camera, the second you bring in actors and you bring in other key creatives, that's when you learn how tight your script is, because they can all fall apart then. So it's really important that you do really strong work, and I'm a huge story editor advocate in that phase, to get the tightest script, the most considered, beat out, punched up, strongest version of a blueprint, before you then take it to actors, where you have to then welcome their expertise to the table and allow them to shape and change and morph and question and build and amplify. And then when you go to the edit and you figure out, yeah, I'm very, talk to my editor. Every time I'm in the edit suite, I'm like, oh yeah, cut this. Cause I'm like cutting jokes I've written. I was like, we don't need this. We don't need this. But in the script phase, I was like, it must be this. And then you're like, nope, cut. So yeah, I think at some point you lock it, and hopefully you don't unlock it after you screen it. But at some point you lock it, and then you have your film. But script is blueprint. Script is not, it's not a novel.
And have you ever, for example, as you were saying, that once you're like editing, you will remove jokes here and there. Do you sometimes use those jokes you removed from a previous one to put it into a new one?
Like a bit that I liked and use it. No, probably not. I mean, there's some jokes that are similar or have a similar kind of structure to them that you might use again, or, some great tricks that work. Like one of my favorite television shows comedy shows in the past decade was Zach Galifianakis' show on FX called Baskets. And it's desperately funny. It's about this guy from Bakersfield, California, who goes to France to become a French clown, and then like fails and comes home. And the show is very funny, and it's like these characters with these desperate wants and desperate needs. But at the end of the day, what it is pratfalls. And they'll say that about their own show. They're like, they're just like stepping on rakes and falling through tables. Like those are the structures of a lot of the bits that they're doing. So yeah, I would say that I don't necessarily like lift a straight joke from one project to another. But if there's a rhythm of something that works, yeah, things come back for sure.
And when you're watching something, as a regular audience member, what is your taste in comedy? What usually you like the most about comedy?
I feel like when you're like deep in comedy, it's you're like a tattoo artist. They get more and more extreme tattoos. Like if my taste in comedy is like, I really love it when people are like really playing with the form and doing intense, like high intense risk taking trickery. Like I loved Jury Duty, which was a show that came out that was like a hidden camera format, and they had all these actors improvising around this one real guy, and that was the show. Or like Nathan Fielder has had two incredible shows that, again, they're really playing with the form. Search Party a few years ago was a great format that was sort of like a caper crossed with a comedy. So, and you're seeing like Succession, great shows that are just like exceptional dialogue, top of their game dialogue. I tend to like that stuff. That's really, really trying to push the form.
Okay. And what do you think it's one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about comedy?
That it's subjective, that it doesn't require, that chaos is great, like that it doesn't require really intense craft, that people are either funny or they're not funny. I don't think that that's true. I think it's something that you can learn. It's a skill and it's a craft like any other. But yeah, I think it's mechanical. Comedy is very mechanical. And there's a lot of, good comedy punches up, not down, we say. Do you know what I mean when I say that? Punches up, not down. So you poke the eye of the king. You never try to poke the person with less status or power. So yeah, I think that there's rules in comedy, broadly speaking, and I think it's mechanical. Laughter is an incredible gift, and it's very cathartic. Like we often think in storytelling, like catharsis, this Aristotelian idea, you cry and you see this like tragedy reflected and you cry, and that is high art. There is something I think incredibly cathartic and powerful about a room full of people seeing something, feeling seen in a different way, being, oh my gosh, that's it. I know what that is. And the laughter, the catharsis of laughter, to me is very cleansing and very powerful as a tool in storytelling. So yeah.
If you could change one thing about the way the industry works, either for writers and directors, and you know what, let's also include storytellers, why not? What would it be?
I could change one thing about the way the industry works.
You have the magic wand, just put it.
I would want for there to be clearer, accessible pipelines for development and mentorship so that people could learn to navigate the industry, not just creatively, but from a business perspective. I think there's often this desire for people who are creative to like not want to think about all of the logistic financial elements of the industry. And I think that that's to the disadvantage of ourselves, just disadvantage of creative. So I would love for there to be just a clearer path for the most talented people to be able to navigate through it. Because I feel like everyone who gets into the industry, it's like this trial by fire, and there's no clear path of how to do it or who to trust or what steps are the right steps or what opportunities are the right. When is saying yes to something a good thing and when is it maybe not? It's a very opaque industry. So yeah, I wish there were more clearer pathways for people to feel empowered in their work creatively, and for that also then to be reflected in how they're compensated financially. Acting as a craft and the business of acting are like two completely unrelated. I mean, actors will tell you this. The art of the audition is a completely different skill set than actually doing the work on the day. It's just a different, and nobody tells you that. And writing could be the same. It's like there's the projects that you do that are your own creative independent projects, and there's the projects that you do for other people, and learning how to navigate that and how to get that work, what that looks like, and what are the jobs. When I was in school, I didn't even know what a story editor was. I don't think most people actually, when they say story editor, know what that means. And a story editor is a few different things. If you are working in a documentary, a story editor is working with interview transcripts and is working with an editor to collect footage, and how do we take all of this wealth of footage that we have and build it into a 5-act structure, let's say. Well, a story editor in cinema, that's a different role, and that can look like a few different things. Like I consult with other writers, I give notes on structure, we sit through and beat through the script and figure out what is the outline, what's the scene breakdown. It's like a coaching consulting kind of job. Or in a writer's room for a comedy, like a story editor is pitching jokes and helping develop characters and working on structure of episodes, pitching, and then can go into writing. So it's like it can be several different things, but nobody tells you about that. And that's part of being a writer for me, is that work. And I actually find that work incredibly fulfilling because I get to work on stories with other creatives who I would probably not get to work with otherwise if I didn't do that. And I love that because I'm a social writer. It's like that's why I like screenwriting, is like I like to work with other people. I like to collaborate with other people in an industry that really, really likes to hold up this like idea of auteurs, like this genius, they wrote and directed and it's their film. And I think that exists, but I also think that that's not the only way. And I think like that's kind of an ego-driven model. As a director, I might be the writer director on a project, but so much of directing is managerial. It's like bringing around you the most talented crew of people that are aligned with your vision, but are also exceptional at what they do. Like I'm not going to go to my DP and tell him how to set up a shot. I'm going to go to my DP and have a conversation about what I'm trying to achieve in my scene, and be like, what do you think? And then have them bring ideas to the table and working together is going to create something much more magical. You empower the people around you instead of trying to micromanage them. And I feel like that's the same in the writing room, and collaborating with other writers is, many brains are great. People have incredible perspectives and incredible ways of doing things. And obviously there's like, everyone remembers from school, like group projects can be hard. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but what the heck is easy? Doing it all on your own isn't easy. But for me, yeah, I love it. I think working with other people has incredible benefits and it makes it more fun and joyful. That's for sure.
What's a story you hope someone tells one day, even if it's not you?
I just want more people to tell their stories. And I don't think that the objective needs to be to win an Academy Award or to win a Pulitzer Prize. But I think there's some real beauty in regular people feeling confident to try to crack a story, whether it's a family story or a personal story. There's some really interesting examples in the last 5 to 7 years of the most unique IP, for lack of a better term, being like purchased or being optioned into something larger. There was a woman whose Twitter feed was optioned into a screenplay that was directed by Janicza Bravo, who's an incredible director, into a film called Zola. But I think at the core of that, what's interesting to me is less that it was made into this film and more that, somebody who probably didn't consider themselves a storyteller told a story and people really loved it. I think for me, it's not what is a story that needs to be told, but I find such delight in people telling their stories who don't necessarily think of themselves as capital W writers, capital S storytellers. For me, that's exciting. This idea that we're in a world where increasingly more people have arenas and platforms to give it a go, to try to share and connect. Because I think that's why we love stories, is they help us understand what it is to live in the world. They make us feel connected. They give us community. They give us comfort. They give us guidance. And I don't think they need to be a $20 million film or very fancy literary novel. A story is a story, and a good story is usually a really honest story, a vulnerable story, a story that's close to the bone and is probably small.
Tell me, like in general, like what motivates you? We all have those days that basically we just want to quit. It's inevitable, happens to all of us, regardless in what we do. So how you stay, like positive or focused on a day that perhaps you're not doing so hot, let's say?
I mean, there's two things. I think this kind of work is either in you or it's not. Like, it's a bit of a calling. Like, people always jokingly say, like, if you can do anything else, do it. So like a bit that's always there. It's like there's never been a promise, so you kind of have to dig in. And some days are hard. I think this is for me where community is important. Like, I have very close friends who are also colleagues, who some of whom do what I do, who are writers and directors, and some of whom are actors, or my editor I'm quite close with. That when you are having those days where you're like, what am I even doing? Can I do anything else I want out, or I can't anymore, whatever. You're all this lost moment, which I think happen often with creatives. It's just an up and down industry, that you have people who can remind you who you are and remind you what you're capable of, and to encourage you to keep going. So I think, there's that existential support. How do you stay motivated from like sort of an existential perspective? And then, practically speaking, I just think I'm a type of person who just works hard and is like, has a lot of projects on the go. And that's because I'm trying to build a life. I'm trying to build a life for myself and for my son. I want to tell really good stories, and I want to make people feel connected. And I want that. To me, that gives me fire. And so on days when I'm feeling bad, I reach out for support. And I also try to shine positive energy around when I am having better days and I see other people around me who are doing great things. I think like the sharing of positive energy, I think, is really important to the community at large, and being the kind of person that champions other people's successes as opposed to stays quiet or resents that. I think it makes a difference for the community. I think it also makes a difference for yourself. If you are excited about other people's success, that can kind of help, sustain you. And
Okay. And my last question. We can all enjoy and relax after an epic chat here. So here it goes. What do you think that could be the best title for this episode?
I feel like it's like a take a swing, tell your story, something like that. Laughter is a life raft. I think that's a title. Yeah, maybe that.
A laughter is a life raft?
Laughter is a life raft. Or I think I say this a bunch, like, give it a go. Take a swing, tell your story, tell a story, tell any story, make it funny.
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused now. So which one we take?
I was just pitching you a bunch of stuff, and I was like, you cool.
Okay. Take a swing on storytelling. Um,
Take a swing, tell your story. That has
take it.
rhythm.
There you go.
Da, da,
There you
da,
go.
da. 3 words, 3 words.
We have a
That's
title.
graphic. My brain also works this way.
I'll take it. Sounds
Your
like a
story.
plan. Sounds like a franchise to me already. Who knows? You know.
Fast and the
And
Furious. All about family. Just like
don't get me started with those films.
I like this. I feel like that got under your skin, and I'm like, let's.
Don't tell me about those films. I'm still wondering like why, like how, like I mean when they took a car into
The
space, I was
money.
like, yeah, of course, but
It's
you
the
know
money.
when they took a Pontiac, I think it was a Pontiac, but whatever, a car into space, I was like, okay, this guy's really like what's next? Are we going to incorporate them in the MCU now or that would be cool. Who knows? But yeah.
That'll be a crossover. Hey, listen, I do appreciate your support and curiosity and advocacy in independent cinema. I think it's important. I think having conversations about this stuff and not trying to solve anything, but just talk about the nuts and bolts of what it is. I think that we all are drawn to any film for is we just want to be entertained and hope that we see something that lights us up in some way emotionally. So that might not be why someone goes to see The Fast and the Furious. But if someone seeing The Fast and the Furious means that another smaller film might get made, then I guess I will take Fast and the Furious being also in the world.
Sounds like a plan. And you know, I mean, at the end, what can I say? You know, the fact that you're pursuing what makes you happy is really cool. You know, the fact that you're I mean, not also pursuing what makes you happy, but you're also working to be a super mom as well. I mean, as I was saying at the beginning, that takes guts. You're making it happen. I mean, it's not easy for sure, but you're showing out there that it's possible. And I'm sure there's people out there who sees you as a role model or as someone who gets things done, and that is super impressive and super badass. And also, it has like this positive impact, and I think that is important, especially right now in this crazy day and era we're currently living in. The fact that we can rely on people like you who can, besides creating cool stuff, are showing us that dreams are possible, and it's okay for you to try something new. That's badass. So
thank you. I think that's the most important thing. Like whatever the thing is you want to pursue in this industry, the idea of getting it done, finishing it, not being afraid of it being perfect, but getting it done. Because I think you can spend your whole life ruminating on what would be perfect and not actually taking a step towards executing it. But getting something done, that's it. An imperfect finished thing has more value to you creatively than a perfect, untouched, unfinished theoretical thing.
And that's how the cookie crumbles.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I want to thank you so much for making this happen. I also want to thank those who stayed the whole episode. Let us know what you think in the comments below, but also on the description below you're gonna find all of Marni's social media. I mean, by this point, come on, you should know why she's super badass, you know. So let's follow her, let's share some love, let's make her viral. Hashtag Team Marni. And again, thank you for making this happen. Keep shining out there, keep kicking ass, keep being a super badass mom, and I'll definitely be seeing you in the next one.
Amazing. Gracias, Daniel. Buenas noches.